There comes a moment in every thinking man's life when the noise of the world becomes unbearable. The laughter sounds forced, the conversations feel hollow, and the more aware you become, the more alone you start to feel. You begin to realize something few ever dare to confront. Intelligence is not a gift, it's a burden, because once your eyes open, they can never close again. You see the hidden motives behind people's smiles. You notice the manipulation inside their kindness. You sense the chaos beneath society's order. It's not that you hate people, it's that you can no longer unsee what you've seen. The crowd calls it isolation, but to the superior mind, it's evolution. To sit in silence is not weakness, it's war. A war against distraction, conformity, and the constant pull to become something smaller than you are. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That is the inner citadel, the fortress within the mind that no one can invade. And intelligent people, the thinkers, the builders, the visionaries, retreat there not to escape life, but to understand it, master it, and rebuild it from the ground up. This video isn't about loneliness, it's about awakening, because once you cross that invisible line between ignorance and awareness, solitude becomes sacred. Stay until the end. Reason number 5 exposes a truth most people will never face. 1. You see too much. You've outgrown most people, not because you're better, but because you see deeper. Awareness expanded your vision, but it also fractured your peace. You no longer see faces, you see masks. You no longer hear words, you hear motives. You no longer feel connection, you feel performance. You sit among friends, and while they laugh, a quiet voice in your head whispers, they don't see it. They don't see how everyone's pretending. How every conversation is a negotiation for attention. How comfort has replaced curiosity. You look around and realize you're surrounded, but alone. And that's when the silence starts to call you, not because you hate the world, but because you've begun to understand it too well. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, the intelligent must walk unseen, misjudged, misunderstood, because the crowd fears what it cannot comprehend. You see through illusions that others need in order to survive. You recognize the lies they tell themselves to stay comfortable. And once you see the game, you can never play it the same again. So you pull away. You begin to prefer the company of your own thoughts, the brutal honesty of silence over the shallow comfort of chatter. You choose solitude, not because you reject others, but because you've realized how few are awake. You don't isolate to escape the world, you isolate to understand it. 2. You value depth over noise. You've started noticing something strange. The more intelligent you become, the less you can tolerate shallow conversations. The weather, gossip, trends, they drain you. You crave something real, something that cuts beneath the surface. You used to fit in easily. You'd laugh at the same jokes, play along with the small talk. But now, every time someone speaks without meaning, your mind drifts elsewhere, into ideas, into silence, into something deeper than words. You scroll through messages and feel that hollow ache. No one's really saying anything. It's all noise. Echoes of a world terrified of silence. And that's when you understand. Most people don't communicate to connect. They communicate to distract. From their own emptiness, from the unbearable sound of their own thoughts. But you've seen what silence can reveal. When you sit alone, ideas start to breathe. Your mind becomes sharper, heavier with insight. You begin to realize that solitude isn't an absence of conversation. It is a conversation with yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That's what solitude forces you to do. Stop talking. Start becoming. Depth terrifies the shallow because it exposes how little they've built inside. That's why intelligent people retreat, not from others, but from the emptiness that passes for communication. You don't seek silence because you dislike people. You seek it because you've tasted meaning, and everything else now sounds like noise. 3. You refuse to be controlled. Freedom is what your solitude protects. Most people don't realize how easily their thoughts are shaped by others. They absorb opinions like sponges, worship trends as truth and call it individuality. But not you. You've started to see the invisible strings. You notice how the world sells comfort disguised as purpose. How people trade authenticity for approval. How society rewards obedience, not strength. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You've tried to play along, to keep your head down, to blend in. But every time you do, something in you revolts. That quiet voice inside, the one that knows, whispers, "This isn't you." You feel it in your chest when you say yes to things that drain your soul. You feel it when you silence your opinion just to keep the peace. So you step back. You start saying no, quietly, consistently. And that's when people begin to notice. They call you distant, cold, arrogant. But what they're really feeling is the discomfort of losing control over you. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the essence of solitude, the reclamation of power. When you're alone, no one's selling you a false identity. No one's manipulating your desire, your attention, your worth. You stop being a product of the collective and start becoming a creator of yourself. Solitude becomes your fortress, not to shut the world out, but to make sure nothing and no one owns you again. 4. You're building in silence. While others broadcast every move, you disappear. While they chase validation, you chase mastery. You've realized that true power grows in the dark, unseen, unpraised, uninterrupted. You've stopped explaining your plans because you've learned. People don't want to understand your vision. They want to measure it, question it, control it, and you're done performing for approval. Now, your silence is strategy. There are nights when you're the only one awake. Everyone else has surrendered to comfort. But you're there, still grinding, still shaping something the world won't recognize until it's complete. The glow of your screen, the scribble of your notes, the quiet pulse of obsession. That's your cathedral. You've become addicted to the process, not the applause, because you've seen what happens to men who talk too soon. Their energy scatters. Their ideas decay under the weight of attention. You'd rather remain invisible, a ghost in plain sight, until your work speaks for itself. Seneca once said, "Silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life." You've learned it well. You've realized that silence protects momentum, guards purpose, and filters noise. You don't need to announce your transformation. You need to earn it in the shadows. Because when the time comes to rise, you won't need to say a word. The results will echo louder than any speech. You're not hiding, you're building. And silence is your weapon. 5. You've outgrown the world. There comes a moment when the world you once knew starts to shrink. The jokes that once made you laugh now sound childish. The pleasures that once satisfied you now feel empty. You look around, and everything seems smaller. That's not arrogance. That's evolution. You've changed. Your mind has expanded beyond the limits of ordinary desire. You can no longer chase what everyone else worships: attention, status, noise. You've seen behind the curtain, and you can't pretend anymore. You walk through crowds and feel like a foreigner in your own species. The world moves fast but nowhere meaningful. People talk endlessly but say nothing real. You used to feel left out. Now you feel liberated. Because when you outgrow the world, solitude stops feeling like exile. It becomes elevation. You start to understand that the higher you climb in awareness, the thinner the air gets. Few can breathe where you're going. Few are even willing to try. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." And that's the reality of growth. You'll be misunderstood, mocked, or dismissed. But that's the price of seeing further than the rest. You're not above the world. You've simply stopped needing its approval to exist. You've become your own compass, your own authority. And in that solitude, you finally feel something rare. Not loneliness, but freedom. You've outgrown the world, and now the only path left is upward. There's a certain peace that only the strong ever find. It's not loud. It's not celebrated. It's not shared. It's the peace of the man who no longer needs to be understood. You've walked through the noise, you've watched people chase shadows, betray themselves, and drown in distractions. You've stood on the edge of madness, between belonging and becoming, and you chose becoming. That choice is what separates the weak from the wise. Solitude was never meant to be comfortable. It's a mirror, and most men can't stand what they see in it. But you stayed, you faced the silence, you wrestled your demons, and through that struggle, you built something unshakable, your inner citadel. The world will keep shouting for your attention, to join the crowd, to dilute yourself, to be one more voice in the chorus of conformity. But you know better now. You've seen what happens to those who trade solitude for acceptance. They lose the ability to think, to feel, to lead. Remember this: solitude is not the absence of connection. It's the purification of it. It's where men of depth prepare for impact. It's where discipline sharpens, purpose hardens, and the soul becomes sovereign. So when the world calls you distant, smile. When they call you cold, stay silent. Because only in that silence will your true power take shape. If this message spoke to you, share it. Subscribe to Timeless Stoic Mind, where strong minds sharpen and solitude becomes strength.